This is Ryan and Michelle, and welcome to the Celebrate Marriage Cast, where we hope to restore and reclaim godly marriages through honest and real conversations.
Welcome to you, our listener. Welcome to episode 53. And Ryan, this marks a really special episode.
Yeah?
Because this is officially the start of season 2, right? If you want to call
Season 2,
it that.
sure.
Year 2.
Year
I don't know
2.
what we're calling it. That.
Right.
Year 2. And this is episode 53. So we celebrate the 1-year mark of the Celebrate Marriage Cast on September 26th. That was the launch date. Last week was episode 52. It was capping off the year. And now we are going into year 2. So exciting. And what a year it's been.
Yeah, it's been really exciting.
We have had so many amazing guests, and today we have a special guest. Every guest is special. This guest is really special because Pastor Chris has been really the pioneer behind this entire Celebrate Marriage Cast. And we've talked before about, we've talked with Counselor Tony Bohr about, what are people seeing? What issues are you seeing in marriage? But today we're going to do a spin on that. And we have this coming from a pastoral perspective. So excited about the show today. But first, we want to say welcome to Pastor Chris Fickel. Welcome, Chris.
Glad to be here.
You were on a 5-Minute Friday once, but this is your first time being on a full episode.
Yeah.
This is like full circle because how long ago was it that this idea started stirring in you to move the podcast forward with the church team?
Well, I think it was almost 3 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, when Karen and I were called to lead a marriage ministry here, just trying to think of different ways that we can reach people. And this was one of the ideas. It was just a matter of a lot of things. We didn't have a studio ready at that time. We didn't have hosts at that time. And so it took some time to pull it off.
I appreciate you sharing those. Those are pretty big pieces, right? But to have this dream and just feel like, God, okay, if this is of you, God, you're going to provide a way, how for this all to happen. And I don't know, some people might have just let that stop them. We don't even have a studio. We don't have a team. We don't have hosts. I don't know. Fun idea, but it sounds like a lot of work. But you were really obedient to that and kept it moving forward.
Yeah, God always provides what you need when you need it. And so, the timing, I guess, was perfect. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So 3 years as a marriage and family pastor, but you've been in ministry for how many years?
Wow. Came on staff, officially full-time paid staff in 2006.
Wow.
And so been kind of doing the worship and creative thing for a long time. And then it wasn't until, probably close to 3 years ago, a little bit less than that, when we felt called to do marriage and family.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
For our listeners that don't know Pastor Chris, he is incredibly talented when it comes to music. And we're always so amazed by your family, which we're going to get to in a second, but you are all so talented. And I don't know if there's an instrument that your family doesn't play. I don't know. I guess I've never seen you play the tuba or something, but
that'd be awesome.
Guitar and piano and you sing and it's just, it's incredible. You guys are talented. But
thank you.
Chris, what was that shift, almost 3 years ago that you were like, okay, I've been a worship leader for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden you pivot and are like, marriage is, I want to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Like what was that shift for you?
Yeah. So love leading worship, love worship and that whole thing. When COVID hit, that was a real pivotal time for us. And just with some different things that was going on in our family, in our lives, there was just kind of this, the best way I can describe it is just this unsettled something. Just this, I don't know, something just needed to change. And I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And I think through a lot of things that were going on with our family and other families and just relationships where we were building, it really started with a conversation. Pastor Keith came in and just said, there was more to the conversation, but at some point it was, what would you feel about leading our marriage and family ministry? And the answer was yes. I mean, instant.
Wow.
I knew exactly what that was, and it's just been a blast ever since.
Yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah.
It's
So
cool
cool.
how God can use those seasons of a little bit of, unknown, unrest to really kind of open and make a path for something new to really be born out of that.
Yeah. And still of the worship leading, it's still a passion of mine. It's just that God gave us this new passion, and that's our main focus in ministry right now, and we love that.
Yeah. So Chris, you had referenced your wife, Karen.
Yep.
Why don't you kind of tell us a little bit more about like your family, your, like maybe how long you've been married?
Yeah.
Hopefully that doesn't put you in a.
No.
All right.
Yeah.
You
So
know.
got the
That's
number
good.
handy. You got it.
That's good.
Great.
Yeah, so Karen and I have been married. We were married in 1995. That'd be almost 29 years here this November. And we've got 4 kids. Our oldest, Noah, then Luke, then Ben, and then Kylie. And so we recently just dropped off our 3rd boy in college. And so it's just 3 of us right now, and it's a little weird.
Yeah, that's a great word for it. We were just talking before this because we also brought a child to college, and now it's also the 3 of us at our house. And our son, you had asked him, how are things at home without your sister? And that was the word he said. It's just weird. It's weird. Yeah, season of transition, but it's good. They're
it's
growing,
all good, but it's a little weird.
Yeah.
And we're looking forward to the change in utility bills, the
Groceries?
the grocery bill,
Yeah.
water bill, gas bill,
Yeah.
all of that good
Yeah.
stuff.
Yes. Silver lining to it all. Yeah. Well, and congrats on upcoming 29 years too. So next year will be a big milestone too. So that's cool.
Thank you.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, we have a really great show today. We're excited to dive into it. Ryan, I think you have the first one here, but do you want to tell our listeners what we're doing today?
Yeah, super excited because, as Michelle said, we've had so many guests from so many different avenues on, giving different perspective on marriage. And, we're super excited just to have a different perspective from a pastoral sense of, really kind of digging in. You've been doing this for almost 3 years, really kind of digging into, hey, what are some things you've learned over this time frame?
Yeah.
And so, super excited to kind of jump into that. And, we've got a few topics to cover, and just really excited to hear from that perspective what some of those things are. So we'll kind of jump in. Chris, if you want to get us started here on number 1, kind of one of the things that you've learned, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, so I'd say the first thing I've learned is that it takes 2. Sometimes it's easy to fall into that trap, especially as a pastor. Let's just say there's a struggling marriage, and someone will come to me and just say, I need help. And sometimes I don't have the ability to meet with the couple. I might only be able to have a conversation with one person for starters. And, hey, this is what's wrong with my marriage. This is what's going on. My husband, blah, 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 or my wife, blah, 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 blah. And it's really easy to get sucked into, siding with
Wow, your spouse sounds like real scum.
Right.
Okay, here's an example. There was a marriage that was struggling some time ago, and it was like that. I ended up meeting and having a conversation once or twice with the wife of anticipating being able to get us all in a room together. And, my husband this, my husband that, and my husband's just, this way, and he's not, all these things that's wrong with her husband. And I was finally able to get him in a room, and we had a conversation. And it was interesting. They're both talking, they're both sharing, and it hit me. It's like, I can kind of see why he's being that way, or I can see why he may be responding this way. I think there's some things that both of you need to work on. In fact, maybe there's more things that actually you, the wife, need to work on than him.
Sure.
And it's just there's always two sides.
Yeah.
It takes two. And I get it. Sometimes there's situations where, one person really screwed up. But largely, in general, it takes two. And so, that's one thing I've learned is that there's always something that we can be working on. And I think forgiveness is another piece of that too, because even, let's say, one spouse really screws up, it takes forgiveness as well to be able to reconcile. So it always takes two. It always takes two.
That's great. I think that's a great reminder too, because if you're sitting there kind of pointing at your spouse, just to reflect and think, well, what is my share of this? How am I contributing to it? And maybe also the importance of, if you're going in to meet with a pastor, that, hey, maybe it doesn't work schedule wise to go, right away with both of you, but eventually you should both be there. And that's helpful. So Chris, when you first started saying that, I thought, oh my gosh, is he going with a song theme here? Because, you are a music guy too. It takes two. It takes two.
That's great.
So I don't know where you're going with the second one, but okay. So great first one there. What's the second thing that you're seeing as you're meeting with these couples throughout the week? You're meeting with them on the weekends. You're seeing so many different couples and situations. What would you say is the second thing that you've kind of learned from that?
Okay, yeah. So the second thing is that the healthiest of marriages come about by a lot of hard work. And when I say hard work, I'm talking like couples who spend time together, quality time together, not just sitting on a couch watching movies, but I'm just saying we're having deep conversation where we're willing to actually work through conflict and, conflict. So that's a big one, like working through conflict. Conflict actually allows us to be able to grow stronger in our marriage. If we're able to navigate it and really work through it. So a lot of times, like when I think of conflict, or when I've always thought of conflict, it was, fighting it out, yelling.
Big, explosive.
Yeah, exactly. But in Karen and my marriage, our tendency is to be quiet, or we might just keep our distance or give the silent treatment. But so all marriages experience conflict. It's just really important to be able to understand what is your conflict or your fighting style. What is that? And then learning how to be able to navigate and work through that as a couple. So working through conflict together, reading books together, watching podcasts together, just having quality time where you can really work on your relationship. An example that I've noticed, sometimes couples will come in and they'll say, hey, our marriage is not normal, or there's a lot of conflict that's going on, or we fight all the time, or whatever. And a lot of times my response will be, actually, your marriage is probably healthier than you think it is. In fact, your marriage is probably more healthy than a lot of other marriages, because of the fact that we're actually sitting here having a conversation, that you guys actually communicate and talk and try to work through your conflict or your situations, says that you guys actually have a healthy marriage.
Sure. And they had to call, make the appointment, come in, arrange work and childcare, and there they are working on it.
That they're willing to bring somebody else into the conversation. That, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, Chris, I think it's so good, because I think so many people don't talk about it. With these big things, whether it's money or intimacy or whatever, like these big communication, these big things that it's very easy to like, oh, well, I don't want to do this again. Like instead of actually having these really hard conversations that it probably will cause conflict, but as you said, coming out the other side, you're going to be so much stronger because you actually put in the work to, hey, let's have a conversation about our finances instead of just avoiding it until 20 years down the road, it's this big, huge problem. Mm-hmm. So I think it's such a great, such a great word in, when couples come in and they think, oh, we're always fighting, but like they're actually talking about it instead of just ignoring it.
Yeah. I think, and this is the way it was in our marriage, and there's still tendencies this way too, where I don't want to talk about it, or I don't want to communicate. That's kind of my nature, my default in the area of finances. Okay. So Karen will hit me up, hey, can we have a finance budget meeting? Can we plan that? Because she knows we need to plan that out. I can't just drop that on him right now. But hey, do you think next Monday or, 2 Mondays from now or whatever, she'd love it just to have the meeting. But my tendency is, that's not, it's hard to do.
Yeah.
And so she'll say, hey, can we meet on Monday and talk about the finances? Okay.
Yeah.
It's not easy to sit and have conversations. For me, that's, that goes against my default. And so it takes work. It takes, that's, I guess, what I'm trying to say is being willing to be uncomfortable, being willing to put in the work and talk about some things that you really don't want to talk about. I mean, I'd love to be able to have Karen just, hey, I've got the finances. Here's where things are at. We've got X amount of dollars left for the month. And I'm like, okay, that's great. That's all I need to know. But she wants to be able to sit down and talk through them. She wants me to, here's where we're at. Here's what we spent. And the details that I need to know.
Yeah.
And although I might not need to know all that or think that I need to know all that, it's really important for her.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because it's like a partnership. She wants your buy-in. She wants to know that you're on the same team.
Mm-hmm. And it's surprising though how many times like couples will come in or whatever and they don't talk at all. Like they don't talk at all. Mm-hmm. Or they're not willing to put any work in at all to work together as a team.
Yeah. I think we've talked about this, some of the earliest episodes were about this drift. It's like an intentional decision that you have to make now to do that hard work, because if you don't, it's just you're going to drift and it's going to be a lot tougher later, and the conversations are going to be bigger, and there's just going to be more to kind of repair and to work through. I mean, it's not super fun. I did laugh a little because I vaguely remember, did you work at a bank or something early on?
Yeah.
So I thought that was really funny that you said you didn't want to have finance conversations.
I actually have a business degree.
Okay, well, good job, Karen, for driving that finance conversation. Right. But yeah, that's great.
All right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Chris, number 3. What's the third thing you've learned here over the past 3 years?
Healthy marriages require a desire to really and truly know your spouse. To really know who your spouse is, to really know what their needs are, because we all have basic needs, right?
Yeah.
And generally, most of the time, they're completely different. So my needs are, for the most part, completely different than Karen's needs.
Yeah.
And so being willing to want to learn and understand who your spouse is and what their needs are is huge.
How does a person go about doing that other than saying, hey, Ryan, what do you need? Do you think tools like 5 love languages and stuff like that, are those helpful tools for people to do?
Yeah, there's actually some great resources. In fact, I brought some books because I highly recommend these books. But yeah, 5 Love Languages is one great way to be able to know a little bit more about your spouse and what their needs are. I would say too, there's some great books out by Dr. Gary Smalley. They're called If He Only Knew. And then the other one is, they work in tandem. The other is For Better or For Best. And the cool thing is one is for the husband and one is for the wife. And so if you really want to get to be able to learn, if I really want to learn more about my wife and the female side of things, I'll read If He Only Knew. And my wife will read For Better or For Best. And it's just, it's a great resource to be able to learn more about your spouse and how my wife thinks.
Sure.
She can read the book to learn more about how I think about things.
So, okay, so just to confirm, so the wives would read this one, it's like pink, For Better or For Best, A Valuable Guide to Knowing, Understanding, and Loving Your Husband.
Yep.
And then the men's one is If Only He Knew, A Valuable Guide to Knowing, Understanding, and Loving Your Wife. It's a picture of towels on the front. And then on the women's one, it has a picture of crumpled towels.
Crumpled up towels. Yeah.
And I'm convinced, we've not actually had this conversation, but I'm convinced that Karen has gotten me to do things out of reading her book.
Sure.
Of how to convince me or coax me to get things done.
Yeah. What are like,
because
what's an
there's
example?
an art. There's an art to that.
Yeah. Are you folding towels?
I don't know. She knows how to do it.
It involves Karen on the show too.
It involves things probably like, oh, honey, I'm so glad you fixed the car and you did this or you did that. And then, that will segue into, oh, by the way, have you had a chance to, weed the backyard yet? Yeah. And I think there's another great book for couples it's called The 4 Laws of Love. It's by Jimmy Evans. 4 Laws of Love. And one of the things I love that he puts in there is he talks about the 4 basic needs of the husband and the 4 basic needs of the wife. And just real quick, so the 4 basic needs of the wife are security, open, honest communication, non-sexual affection, and leadership. And then the 4 basic needs of the husband typically are honor, respect, sex, friendship, and domestic support. And I mean, I think he's pretty right on in those, at least for me in our marriage. But great book, great resource if you really want to learn more about your spouse and really be more attentive to their needs. It's kind of a desire I think I'd love to have at some point would be some sort of class. Okay, men are going to come to this class and we're just going to learn about our wives.
Yeah.
And women are going to come to this class and we're just going to learn about our husbands. I think that would be really beneficial.
Yeah. Thank you for those resources. We can put those links in the show notes too, right? For our listeners to click through to those. So,
Yep.
Chris, what would you say if somebody's listening and they're thinking, okay, that's great, but I feel like our situation right now it's just really impossible. It's so beyond, it's impossible.
Yeah, I would say this. No situation is impossible for God. I'm literally walking with 3 couples right now who I can tell you that things have been messy beyond belief. And God's worked miracles. Marriages that you would say were completely done and had every reason to be done are being healed and put back together. And so
wow, thank you, Jesus.
Nothing's impossible for God. We say this a lot, like God's completely blowing our mind right now just because of the cool things that he's doing in marriages. And, and I would say too, a lot of these situations come out of sin or like major mistakes, okay? Infidelity and those kind of things. And every single one of those marriages would say that if it hadn't have been for that situation, as messy as it was, they do it again because of what God's doing in their lives now.
Wow.
And where they were and where they are now, completely transformed.
Wow. That's a really big statement.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But what I will say about all of these couples is that they've pressed in, they've seeked God throughout, and they put in the hard work.
Yeah.
They've really put in the hard work, and we're seeing the benefits. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that encouragement. I feel super encouraged for our listeners
Yeah.
just hearing that. Like, nothing's impossible. Our God is so great. And I mean, even just the ways that He's restored our lives, I mean, it's just incredible what He can do. So thank you for sharing that, Chris.
Yeah.
Chris, this has been so fun. It's been so great. And again, just a big thank you to you and the vision of this, of just really, really fighting for marriage. I mean, I think, we shared this last week. It's important. And I think being willing to do something different, in through this avenue to reach people, to really just fight for marriages. I think there's so much out there right now that is against it. And I love being in this fight with you. And I love the vision that you've had for this. And it's been so fun. It's been so changing for our marriage, so again, thank you, thank you.
And thank you guys. Thanks for hosting this podcast. And Karen and I have really appreciated your willingness to be vulnerable and just to share your experiences. And there's such a connection with that, because you guys are the real deal, and you're sharing real life experiences of what's going on in your marriage and in your family. And there's a connection there. So,
Thanks, Chris.
thank you.
Thanks for
Chris.
saying that. Somebody had asked us, I think, was it Tony? It asked us, said, where do you get all this stuff? And Ryan had said, God, He just, He gives us fresh content every week.
Yeah,
There's
that's
just
right.
so
Just
much life that happens. So,
a lot of life happens, right?
Chris, so you have seen these all year long. We had 26 episodes in year one where we had guests. We had 24 different guests on those shows. So a lot of guests. And you know what we ask our guests? Our guest questions. So Ryan and I were wondering if you would want to answer the guest questions.
Sure, of course. Yeah.
All right.
All right.
All right. So, Chris, to build off last week's episode here, what is your marriage why? Why is marriage important to you?
So, marriage is God ordained, and it says said in Genesis 2, right, that man should not be alone. He needs a helper.
Yeah.
And I need a helper. And it's fun to be able to do life together as a team. And I need a helper. I think of this example. So when we're driving in the car, this is the best example I could give. We're driving in the car, and my wife, Karen, a lot of times will make comments about, my driving, or that I don't brake soon enough, and those kind of things, right?
Sure.
Like her legs will, tighten up, or grab things or whatever, or she'll say something. But the funny thing is so, I'll poke fun at that, or I'll make comments about it, or I give her a hard time. But the funny thing is she's actually saved us from accidents plenty of times. There's been a few red lights that she's had to quick point out to me. And so, there's a really good chance that I might not even be here if it hadn't have been for some of those comments.
Suitable helper.
Right.
Yep.
So
Right.
we need a helper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's
good.
great. Good job, Karen.
So good.
Yeah.
I've ridden with Chris. It's not bad. All right, Chris, number 2, best date night.
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this, and it's actually really hard for me to always pick one thing. So
That's
I've got
a good problem.
so I have so several things come to mind. First thing is I love just taking walks with Karen, just one-on-one. Like we usually love to go to like Good Earth Park, and we'll just kind of walk the trails and just have conversation. That's kind of one of them. The other thing is, I think a lot of date nights, not necessarily like the spectacular place that we went to, but maybe just a time where we really just made some really cool memories. You know, like there was, okay, I remember one time we weren't even married yet. We were dating and we were in college, and we went to the beach one time. And at the beach, I don't know if they still do, they had these big fire pits. And so we go to the beach and light a fire. And I remember that we went there and I had absolutely nothing to burn. And so I remember going back to the car, and I remember tearing up like one of those big maps.
Okay.
I remember just, it didn't last
This
very long,
bonfire
but
is
we
going to
were
happen.
burning the map. And of course, we're in Los Angeles, and that was back then. We didn't have the GPS on our phones. I had to know how to get back, and that probably played a part in us getting home late. But just making cool memories together. So yeah,
awesome.
That's awesome. I love that story.
Awesome. And lastly, Chris, after I believe 29 years of marriage, what's bringing you joy right now?
So God's just doing a lot of really cool things in our life and in our marriage. And I think right now it's just the privilege of just being able to walk with people and to maybe be able to just, not even help or give advice or anything like that. It's just walking with people. Like just to be able to see God's faithfulness through prayer. And just to be able to just be encouraged that, God is faithful, and no matter what you're facing, and it feels like there's just a lot on your shoulders right now, and there's a lot of heavy stuff going on right now with some people, and we're just walking with, and we're just praying that, we're just praying. Yeah. And God just shows up. And so God's faithfulness right now in our marriage and in the people that we're walking with right now.
Awesome.
Chris, thank you so much for your leadership with the podcast, and thank you for being a guest today. It's been a really great show.
It's been great to be a part. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to our listeners for joining us today. Find us at celebrate.church/marriage, and we hope that you have a great week. We will see you for 5 Minute Friday.